delighted to have the Reverend Martin Pennington coming to talk to us about the vagus, the vagus nerve. I'm sorry, that just went from my memory for a moment. It's probably got something to do with memory, has it? So I can learn a lot from it. Anyway, I'm sure we're going to find this very fascinating because Martin will be putting a spiritual spin on this particular nerve and helping us to see how we can really relate to it from a higher level as well as from a physical level. So without any further ado, I'll pass you over to Martin. Thank you, Martin.
Thank you, Neville. Welcome, everybody. It's quite a privilege to be able to talk to you tonight. And as Neville said, I'm going to be talking about an article that I submitted to the New Age a couple of months ago, actually, on the vagus nerve, and basically on the human body. And I have entitled my talk, The Grand Man. Can anybody tell me what the Grand Man is?
Sorry, I've muted everybody, so we need to unmute it for them to say.
Okay. Do you want to do that, or should I?
They need to.
Okay. So, is there anybody out there who would like to give their an explanation of the Grand Man or what they think of it? There's no wrong answers. Okay.
Whole of humanity.
The whole of humanity. Okay. That's a good answer. Yep.
It's a picture of heaven.
A picture of heaven. Yeah. That's good.
Functioning. It's the functioning of heaven and how it functions, like all the members, the organs, the arteries, the veins, etc., of the ordinary human, and it's expressed in a grand scale, so that all of the different organs have a spiritual function that corresponds to the physical function.
Leah. Thanks, Leah. That's an excellent answer. Thanks for giving that answer. Yeah. So basically, it's all of heaven. It's a place of Christians, communities rather, a place of communities. And it's probably most importantly, it is in the form of a human body. We don't quite understand how that really works in practice, but that's why we call it the Grand Man. And of course, pardon me, ultimately it's the body of Christ. And so that's what I'm going to be talking about tonight, that body in heaven and this body of each one of us on the earth. Now, those outside the new church, those who've not read the writings, would be familiar also with the talk of a body. The Apostle Paul, in his letters to the Christians, wrote about something which he called the body of Christ. 1 Corinthians 12:12, he wrote, "The body is a unit, though it is composed of many parts, and although its parts are many, they all form one body. So it is with Christ." 1 Corinthians 12:27, "Now you are the body of Christ, and each of you is a member of it." Ephesians 4:16, "From him the whole body, fitted and held together by every supporting ligament, grows and builds itself up in love through the work of each individual parts." So Paul also had a picture of the body, and even in some ways that picture pointed to the idea that Swedenborg presents to us of the Grand Man. Although Paul recognized that that was the church, particularly today, of course, those outside the new church, those who've never looked at the writings, will not understand that that is more, it is more, the body of Christ is more than just an analogy or a metaphor. It actually reflects the form and the shape of heaven. And of course, we know that the Apostle Paul had experiences with Christ. In 2 Corinthians 12:2, he says, I know a man who in Christ 14 years ago was caught up to the third heaven. Whether it was in the body or out of it, I do not know, but God knows. So, in fact, in case you didn't know it, the Apostle Paul had an experience remarkably like Swedenborg did. And perhaps that is why he speaks of a body like the grand man. So Swedenborg talks to us about the grand man in. Yeah, thanks. So in the Arcana, we read a number of paragraphs here. Every regenerate person is a miniature heaven. Heaven itself, which the Lord rules, is in the shape of a physical human body and is therefore called the grand man. Furthermore, the same order exists with every individual in heaven or earth, angel, spirit, or man. So that's interesting. He sees the grand man as not just being in heaven exclusively, but on earth, being a place for angels, a place for spirits, and a place for human beings, for physical men as well. In the Arcana 2996, we read, though in this world it is unknown, in the spiritual world nothing is better known than that all things in the human body have a correspondence with things in heaven. So true is this that not even the smallest cell in the human body has something spiritual and celestial which matches a heavenly community. For heavenly communities are arranged in such an orderly manner that collectively they are a complete human being. Consequently, it is common to associate specific communities with particular parts of the human body. All this reminds us that the Lord alone is the true man. So there we see Swedenborg getting down in an almost majestic way to the tiniest single cell, or nerve or something like that, and saying that is a picture of things that are also true in heaven. I have been given to know, for example, which communities belong to the region of the heart and what these are like, which ones belong to the lungs and what these are like, which communities belong to the liver and what they are like, which ones belong to the sensory organs such as the eyes, the ears, the tongue and the rest, and what these communities are like. So these are all communities of heaven which are not just have labels which are from the body, but actually have some kind of likeness. Maybe it's in the way they operate, maybe it's in the way that they work together, the way they appear. Certainly, there's a quality there to them that they can recognize is similar to the qualities of the eyes or the ears or the tongue. Put now your hand under my thigh means being bound by your respect for marriage. Your hand is your desire to do good, and your thigh is marriage. These parts of the human body correspond to the spiritual and celestial communities in the grand man. So by these actions, we are acknowledging our connection to heaven and experiencing its influence in us. So in this way, Swedenborg is pulling out references. This is a reference, of course, to Isaac, Abraham, I believe, and Isaac making an oath. And that oath was tied to something as sacred as marriage. And that doing those actions in the world links us up somehow in a mystical way with the communities that they belong to in heaven. In the grand man, celestial things constitute the head, spiritual ones the body, and natural ones the feet. They exist in this consecutive order. In addition, celestial things, which are the highest, are ringed about by spiritual ones, which are in the middle, and spiritual ones are ringed about by natural, which are the lowest ones. So even in the way the body has different levels and different heights and different areas of respect, so heaven matches this. So this is a picture of the cranial nerves, which descend from the brain in pairs into the head and into the body. The cranial nerves are a set of 12 paired nerves. That means that there are 2 nerves in each one. In the back of your brain, they descend from the back of your brain. The cranial nerves send electrical signals between your brain, face, neck, and torso. Your cranial nerves help you taste, smell, hear, feel sensations. They also help you make facial expressions, blink your eyes, and move your tongue. The 12 cranial nerves are a group. The cranial nerves are sensory, motor, or both. Sensory cranial nerves help a person to see, smell, and hear. Conversely, motor cranial nerves help control muscle movements in the head and in the neck. Each nerve has a name that reflects its function and a number according to its location in the brain. Pardon me. So you'll notice if you look at these nerves, most of them have to do with the head. Olfactory, optic, obviously is of the eye, and then other ones are to do with the face, and then these are to do with the mouth and the neck. Only the vagus nerve, the 10th cranial nerve pair, goes straight all the way down into the whole of the torso, the whole of the body. And the vagus, of course, is the Spanish word for a wanderer. And it's because the vagus nerve wanders throughout the body that we call it vagus. And you can see here, these are nerves that have to do with the head, but it's the vagus nerve comes down here, touches the heart, the lungs, the stomach and the intestines, the kidneys, the bladder and the genitals, and all it stretches throughout the body, just wandering everywhere. And not only does it communicate from the brain to all of these things, but it actually allows a return communication from our organs, our internal organs in our torso and in our head and neck, are able to communicate back with the brain through this vagus nerve. We can see here all of the organs displayed that the vagus nerve touches, and up here you can see what's called the laryngeal nerve, which is a little branch that comes off this great vagus nerve, and you can just see what I'm going to explain to you in a minute, how the vagus nerve has a very strange path which it follows. And there's just another diagram which shows you the incredible, like an X-ray, the incredible expanse of it, the length and breadth of it. So let's zero in then on this vagus nerve. Have you ever wondered how our brain gets our mouth to say what we want to say? When you think about it, our brain has a lot to manage. It must communicate with our voice box, called our laryngeal or larynx, stretching them, tightening, loosening them. It must cause our lungs to inflate and deflate to push air through our larynx. It must work all the muscles in our lips and tongue and throat, as well as your cheeks and your jaw. Pardon me. It takes about 100 muscles to speak well. It's important to move, tense, or relax the muscles in your face at the right time. All of these things, all of these commands must travel down one of the many nerves that come out of the base of our brain. And this is where the vagus nerve comes in. This is a main pair of nerves that branch off branch off at many points. But at one point they branch off near the laryngeal larynx, or what's colloquially called the voice box. The right-hand branch comes off the vagus nerve cable in the neck and connects directly to our voice box. On the other side, another fibre branches off the left vagus nerve cable, but instead of connecting horizontally to the larynx like on the right, it travels all the way down to the heart, loops under the aorta, and then this now we call recurrent laryngeal nerve, Latin for back, travels up to the larynx and connects to it on the left side. The aorta is a large blood vessel coming from the top of the heart. It's a main artery which takes oxygenated blood from the lungs, pressurized by the heart, to all parts of the body. It rises from the top of the heart like a handle on the heart, really, and then descends down to the abdomen, divides into two, continues on down to the legs. Why does the left recurrent laryngeal nerve, sometimes it's the right very occasionally, take this strange journey down to the heart, then back up to the larynx in the neck? There is no discoverable reason, but it's interesting that this path is not only in humans, but in all animals, and this leads to a very peculiar phenomenon. In animals with long necks. In the giraffe, for example, this recurrent laryngeal nerve is about 4.5 meters long, 15 feet. The longest necked animals of all time were the extinct sauropod dinosaurs, like the Brachiosaurus. These were the leaf eaters in the movie Jurassic Park, if you've seen that. Some of which had necks 14 meters long. In these animals, the recurrent laryngeal nerve was 28 meters. Don't ask me how they know this, because of course the nerves have long since disappeared. But I think there may be actually channels in the neck bones of these animals that they can see the nerve follow. Evolutionary biologists like the famous atheist Richard Dawkins insist this is a good example of a cobbled together process of evolution by unintelligent design. These are random changes, he insists, that sometimes work and sometimes become anachronisms. There's a video on YouTube of him dissecting a giraffe's neck to show this strange recurrent laryngeal nerve in all its futility. I'm going to play a short section of that video where they're actually dissecting the neck of a giraffe. So if you don't like a little bit of flesh and blood, you better turn away at this moment.
All right, just have to give me a second. I'm playing the whole thing?
Yep. It's a...
Hang on, I just need to make sure I've got sound. Sorry.
That's all right.
I'm too good an anonymous for that. You have to trust me now. What I'm actually holding here is the beginning of that nerve. It actually starts out not as a separate nerve, but as a branch coming off of a bigger nerve called the vagus nerve. And this is going to keep running all the way down the body. So you'll see it again over here, all the way down the neck on both sides. So you can see it again right there.
Yes.
And this is going to wrap around the great vessels coming out of the heart. So here it is wrapping around that, and then it continues right there. So here's the vagus going down, and here's the vagus continuing.
Right.
And right over here, there's a branch right there. So it's looping and it's coming back, it's doing a U-turn all the way down here. So it's traveled that entire distance to make a U-turn to go all the way back up again. And so now we can follow it going back up again. So we follow this branch, and if we look, we see it again over here. Here it is, like that. And here you see it going up. This is the voice box, the larynx, and so you can see it going right into the back of the larynx here. And as it innervates this area, it controls the muscles that then control making sounds, but also coordinating breathing and swallowing in this area. So this is a very important nerve. Interestingly, where it ends is pretty close to where it started. It started here, coming out of the brain. It really only needed to go about 2 inches.
Yes, amazing.
But it went all the way down and came all the way back.
Yes. That's a beautiful example of historical legacy as opposed to design.
Exactly. This is not an intelligent design. An intelligent design would be to go from here to here.
Yes.
It does kind of beg the question, though.
That's it. So you can see, yes, this amazing anomaly, that the best that the world can offer as a solution to it is that when fish first existed, were the most ancient species, they had no necks. So it didn't matter what the vagus nerve did, but it's not a very satisfactory answer. I have an alternative explanation. You can see. Yeah, not a very satisfactory answer, Richard. I have an alternative explanation. So, I believe that deeply and profoundly impressed upon the human body is a powerful truth that when we speak, it must be from the heart, not filtered through our brain, not distorted by manipulation and lies in order to grab power over others. The heart represents our will, the highest place in us, the place of love. Swedenborg writes, "The church in the external resides on the lips, and the inner church resides in the will. When the inner parts of a person make one with the outer, what resides in the heart then lies also on the lips, or what resides in the will then lies in action. So what lies on the lips is the heart speaking, and what lies in action is the will acting. There is no disagreement. Thus it is also faith speaking and love and charity acting. That is, it is also the Lord, the source of our faith and charity, speaking and action." Thank you. So, does anybody want to ask any questions or make any comments?
People will just need to unmute.
You need to unmute your Zoom microphones.
Were any giraffes harmed in making that video?
The giraffe died of a good old age.
Oh, that's good.
Thanks for that question. We really did need to clear that up, didn't we?
Well, I hope I didn't just have some short suits and some long suits.
I want to ask a question.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if the vagus nerve gets affected by people taking drugs. I'm talking about illicit drugs now, and I'm just sort of thinking by that diagram, it looks like, it starts up in the brain and then it will go down to the kidney or the heart or whatever. And I'm wondering if the communication can actually get stopped through drugs.
That's a really That's a really good question. I'm not really sure of the answer to that. Certainly, if the vagus nerve gets cut, it's a serious problem. So if the drugs were to block it somehow or damage it, that would be very serious indeed. The body is so incredibly complex, and the interaction between the brain and the rest of it is also very complex as well. That it would be difficult to say, yeah, unless you actually saw it happening to someone. Not aware of any drug taking that actually specifically damages the vagus nerve, but it's certainly damages.
Been injured in battle sometimes, like shot in combat.
Trauma, yeah.
How would the patient?
Yeah, trauma, physical trauma. Yeah. Definitely, and to the degree that drugs cause physical trauma, that would definitely affect the vagus nerve, with serious consequences, because it's so complex that we have no idea what would be the actual results. It would depend on, where along the nerve the damage was done.
Can it be repaired if it has been damaged?
I presume it can be, because neuroscience now is sufficiently advanced, and the surgery involved in correcting. In fact, there's an enormous innovations on the horizon to do with even incorporating electronics into the human body to repair things like paraplegics and quadriplegics, and replacing the nerve damage there that causes those things. So yes, there probably are things that can be done, and it's certainly improvements happening all the time at a massive rate.
Can the vagus nerve be seen sort of using X-ray or scanning equipment? It seems to be so small.
Well, I don't know whether you saw her actually putting her finger under it in the video. Yes, it seems to have about the thickness of a shoelace or something like that, which is quite thick, I guess. Really.
I just wonder whether that can be actually picked up, so you could find out, in the sense where the damage, pre-damage, where it was.
Yeah. It's a little bit more complex than that, because as you saw some of the pictures that I show you, it's like a tree roots, or twigs, massive branches, and damage anywhere along those. There you go. Thanks. Anywhere along those branches could lead to a breakdown in the communication. You have to understand, the communication is going back and forth. It's not just travelling from the body up to the brain. It's travelling back from the brain, and the brain's being influenced by these parts of the body as well. I have actually, you could put us back on that picture. Thanks. Yeah. I have two further studies that I am in the process of producing on the vagus nerve. The first one, or the second one in the series, I've labelled "Breathe Deep and Feel the Butterflies Quieten." The only organ in our torso, in our chest and stomach, that we can truly control is our lungs. But the moment we anticipate stress in any form, most of us stop breathing and hold our breath. This is activated and activates the fight, flight, freeze response. This increases our pain, stiffens our muscles, increases our anxiety, and often our fear. if we take back control and begin to breathe in through our noses and out through our mouths, expanding our chest and belly, we can actually affect the other organs in our torso, particularly our heart. We can slow it down and relax our muscles and literally take back control through our breathing. I'm sure you've all probably heard this or been aware or actually even been involved in it through deep breathing exercises and meditation and other things. But this is really interesting because Swedenborg has always stated that it is through the lungs. Now, control of that the lungs represent the truth, and it is the heart. The heart represents the love, and it is through the truth that we learn to do good and we learn to love. And so, in the same way as our physical lungs we use to control and relax and help our heart, so our spiritual lungs control and free our spiritual heart. And once again, this whole interaction is controlled and caused to function through this part of the vagus nerve here, the lungs on this side and the heart and lungs on this side there. But we have no direct control over our heart by ourselves, but because of our direct control over our lungs, we can influence our heart and other parts of our body as well. That's my second talk, and my third talk is entitled The Second Brain. The second brain talks about the gut, the human intestines, which is a major part of the vagus nerve. It's called the second brain because the vagus nerve connects the gut and the brain, forming what scientists call a gut-brain axis. Interestingly, our intestines house a greater number of bacteria than all the cells in our body combined. But this microbiome, this great garden of bacteria, plays a crucial role in enhancing our brain function by producing important chemicals and hormones like serotonin, estrogen, oxytocin, and many others. These chemicals help to reduce the stress, depression, anxiety, which in turn influences our behaviour. Gut bacteria also impact our well-being in numerous other ways. In the writings of Swedenborg, but what's really interesting is that in the writings of Swedenborg, the world of spirits is described as existing within the realm of the intestines. So this is the part of the world of spirits, part of the spiritual world that is called the world of spirits, which we directly relate to, living in this life, in this world. And similar to the bacteria in our physical intestines, this spiritual realm is vast in number, diverse in variety and species. It also exerts tremendous control over both our internal and our external lives. In the same way as we now understand our gut and our microbiome exerts control not only over our physical body, but over our emotional and thought and our brains as well. So that's two other talks on this subject, which is, as you can see, is quite big and quite extensive, and was already foreseen by Swedenborg 200, 300 years ago. And that really is the end. Thank you very much for tuning in and coming along to the meeting tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well,
Any questions?
Any further questions from anybody before we?
I found it very interesting that that vagus nerve goes all the way from the brain, all the way down to the heart, and then back to the brain again.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it just it reminded me of how our thoughts affect our feelings, which then go back and affect our thoughts, which so it's this loop going around.
Yep.
All the time. The brain, the mind affecting the heart, affecting the mind, just continuously affecting each other.
Yeah.
So,
and of course, Swedenborg, after a great deal of research in the body, searching for the soul, decided that, of course, the soul is in the whole body, not just in one part of it, like, for example, the brain. It's in the whole of our bodies.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's like the fractal is in the complete hologram.
Yeah.
I wondered if Clifford had a question. I noticed he unmuted.
Clifford, do you?
I had never heard of the term vagus nerve before, I must confess, but I found it very interesting, your presentation.
Thank you.
And thank you for that. I've always, I have come across the quotations from Swedenborg, which you have mentioned. And I've always realized that there is a link between our thoughts, our emotions, and our intestines as well.
Yes, yes.
Because sometimes when we are overstressed, this affects our body, and we have, for example, to go to the toilets immediately. You see what I mean?
Yes, definitely.
It affects this. Our tummy gets affected by that. So there is a relation definitely between our emotions, our heart, and our guts also.
Thank you. Yeah, that's so true.
When someone says they've got a gut feeling about something,
absolutely.
Maybe it's that nerve down there.
Very good. Very good.
I saw this interesting video on YouTube about the vagus nerve, and they were giving these exercises, these breathing exercises.
Yes.
They had to sort of, I can't remember if it was while they finished inhaling or, oh, that's right, yeah, they had to inhale as much as they could, and then they had to hold it until they felt like they were going to explode, and then all of a sudden they let it out. But yeah, it was interesting, and that was supposed to be very beneficial for them. I hope it was.
It's an interesting thing that although we have a great deal of control over our lungs, we can't actually stop ourselves from breathing. You could try to hold your breath indefinitely, but eventually your body will take over and force you to breathe, even if it's only water or something that you're breathing in.
Yeah.
So there's that balance between control and a lack of control. They call this the sympathetic and the now I've got myself in a position sympathetic or something like this.
Parasympathetic. No.
Parasympathetic, that's it, thank you. Sympathetic and parasympathetic.
Well, it's humbling, very humbling.
Yep, it is.
When you just realise that we're nothing of ourselves, we're nothing. Not anything.
Well,
But
there's
it's
something,
also,
but we're not sure what it is.
it's also inspiring. I know there's a lot of people in this world that don't really like their bodies very much. And I think one of the messages, one of the most powerful messages that comes out of the writings about the grand man is that not only did God regard our bodies as so special that he chose to take it himself, but he regarded it as so special that he chose to use it to build heaven, and to create heaven out of that same shape. That is our human bodies. So it gives them an enormous amount of splendour, in my opinion.
I was wondering about the grand man. Usually when that's described, talks about the parts of the body all working together and all that, but it never mentions any clothes on the grand man. I was just wondering if he's got shoes on or something. not shoes, but,
I think, are you familiar with the word appearance?
yeah.
I think clothes are regarded as an appearance. That is a type of truth that's not really a truth, but it's a truth that substitutes for the truth. And I think that's what clothes do.
Right.
I think clothes are given to us so that we look beautiful, even though we don't feel beautiful. Maybe.
Yeah, they do help. Yeah, that's true. They can cover up some unbeautiful.
Yeah.
But no, that's nice.
All right, looks like there. Does anybody bring their hands up?
No, I can't see anybody putting their hands up, I think.
Well, I'd like to just say a great thanks.
Sorry.
Great thanks to you,
Right.
Martin, for coming along and giving us that talk. I found that absolutely fascinating.
Thank you.
You know,
Yeah.
having an accounting background, and I've never studied any biology. I learned a number of things tonight, and the illustrations were great as well.
Yep.
And of course, linking it back to Swedenborg, having read Swedenborg, I can now sort of relate better to what the way you explained it. So that was terrific.
Yep.
Yeah.
And if you're anything like me, you've been studying him for years, and there's still new things to learn.
Yes, yeah. Anyway, we'll look forward to talk 2 and
Thank you.
talk 3, if you like.
Thank you.
In due course.
Thank you very much.
But thank you to everybody for coming in to the meeting tonight, and I'm sure you will all enjoyed it. But just remind you that next month, I'm not sure of the date, but it'll be the last Friday. 30th. Oh, it's the 30th, thank you, David. 30th of June. We will then have Mr. Mohammed Madeen coming and talking about his pilgrimage to Mecca and what it meant to him doing that. So that should be another fascinating talk, and that will be really good. So hopefully we'll welcome you all on that occasion too.
Right, thank you.
Okay, all right, we'll say good night to everybody then.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.